Hey guys, Virgin Vinyl with you today. I've got one of my favorites of the classic proto heavy metal, hard rock, heavy rock bands. And I think it's probably one of their most underrated albums. That is, of course, Deep Purple, the self-titled third album from the Mark I version of the band. I'll take it out of the sleeve there. There we go. So this album right here is actually the first Deep Purple album I ever owned, and it's the first Deep Purple album I really got into. And so it actually made it a bit strange for me when I finally heard In Rock, which was the next one, or was it Machine Head? I think I heard, they were around the same time, so I can't remember which one. No, it was In Rock for sure. Because I remember, I grew up with my mum listening to the original cast version of Jesus Christ Superstar, which had Ian Gillan singing, and always loved his voice as, playing Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. That's a great rock. It's like a prog rock opera, it's pretty amazing, really, if you sort of forget about the subject matter. But even with the subject matter, it just sort of kind of makes it like an interesting story. I'm not Christian, but I find it very interesting as a story, and it's well told. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. The point is that Ian Gillan, I was a fan of, and then when I heard him singing in Deep Purple, I wasn't quite sure what to make of it at first, because he sounds quite different actually in Deep Purple. He's sort of going much harder, I guess. Although I think some of his greatest singing performances are in Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, there's some absolutely incredible performances there, like the Garden of Gethsemane is probably one of the greatest vocal performances of all time, I think, that's ever been put to record. If you haven't heard it, go and check it out. It's incredible. So anyway, it was a bit strange when I first heard him, and at first it didn't knock this off the perch as being my favorite for a while. Even after I started, and I liked it, but I was it took me a while to really warm up to it, and eventually, of course, I fell in love with it, and I sort of saw it from a different angle and was able to appreciate it. But with this album, I mean, I don't understand why this one gets so overlooked, because from the first moment I heard it, I thought this was something really special. I don't know, this thing, it's full of sort of unique stuff. Like Chasing Shadows is really unique. What other song around that time sounds anything like that? It's really sort of hypnotic, and then you've got songs like Why Didn't Rosemary, which is sort of like some weird song about an abortion, I guess. And what does it say here? Oh, it's actually got this actually has little sort of spiel about each song on here. So what do they say? Vaguely inspired by an Otis Spann number, and again, it's an attempt to widen the scope of a plain 12-bar sequence. I guess they're just talking about it musically, and it just says interesting words from Rod. So, of course, this is when Rod Evans was fronting the band on vocals, and before Roger Glover joined on bass, so it was Nick Simper on bass. And there's some really dark stuff on here, with that song Why Didn't Rosemary, it's sort of kind of bluesy and stuff, but then it has this dark turn in the melody, which I really love. It's so cool. Blind is really cool. Then they did a cover of the Donovan track Lelania, but he says Lelania in the song. What have they said about it? Donovan's song done how we thought Donovan might like to have heard it. The only double tracking on this cut is the guitar at the end. The slightly jazzy feel to the organ is a bow in the direction of Donovan's mellow Yellow Days. Okay. But for me, the real masterpiece on this album is the final track, April, which is this epic long track, which is kind of broken up into three parts. You know, you have this like a sort of like acoustic section, you have this orchestral section, and then you have the rock band section. Let's see what they said about that. Yes, okay, so a sort of three-part concert about the month of April. The first section is played by just John and Richie, so that's John Lord and Richie Blackmore, playing piano and organ, and Richie playing the acoustic guitar, a rhythm pattern and a double-track lead pattern and electric guitar. The choir was added afterwards, so there's choir sections in there as well. It's really, really beautiful, incredible writing. I absolutely adore it. It's just, it's very like, I think why I like this is because, you know, and especially when I first heard it, that was when I was really getting into progressive rock, really getting into jazz rock fusion, and this sounded like it. You know, I was looking for music that was pushing outside the box, pushing outside the expectations of hard rock and heavy metal, and you know, this was one of those albums to me that sounded like they were doing it really early on. So, you know, Deep Purple emerged, they record their first album in 1968, Shades of Deep Purple. Then you've got, I think it's the same year, the Book of Talesian. And to be honest, like those two albums seem to get much more credit than this one, but to my ears, they're just boring compared to this. I don't know. There's a couple of good tracks on there. Don't get me wrong, and I like if you put them on, I'm not hating it. I enjoy it, but here is where they actually start to do something really creative and really unique, and it's kind of weird, and it's kind of progressive thinking, and it's kind of out of the box. And I think maybe that's why people don't like it en masse, because you know most people prefer something like formulaic and familiar. But anyway, it was only like a year later, so they did two albums in '68, I believe, and then in this was released in 1969, and so in the space of 2 years they gave us their first three albums. Now, after this album, Richie decided that he wanted to take the band in a heavier direction, and he fired Rod Evans and Nick Simper, and they brought in Ian Gillan and Roger Glover, and of course we got the masterpiece of heavy rock or proto-heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, in rock, which has now become, you know, over time is now probably my favorite Deep Purple album, although it's really up there with Burn, and I still love this very much, and Machine Head's great. Doesn't really matter. But this was sort of like the end of that era, and an era that sort of gets, I mean, it gets a little bit overlooked, and especially this album gets overlooked in my opinion. This is an Israeli pressing, pressed by, I don't know if Portraits is the Israeli company. I don't think so, but anyway, that's the cover that they have there. I don't know if that's the cover that you got in the West, but that's what we got here in Israel in 1968. I think that's when this was pressed. Doesn't say. Well, I don't know if this was originally from 1968. Hang on, maybe it says on the record. Nope. Okay, never mind. It's old though. I can tell it's old. Anyway, it's I think, and look at that artwork of the album cover. It's so cool. Is that Hieronymus Bosch did the art? Yeah, Hieronymus Bosch. I remembered that. That's cool. And where are the guys? There's the guys there, I believe. Yeah, there they are. Tucked in to the painting. Very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. If you're a Deep Purple fan, I don't know, actually, like, it's sort of hard to recommend this album to somebody who is a big Ian Gillan fan or even the later eras of the band, because this is quite different. Rod has a much smoother voice and a more sort of mid-rangey kind of voice. He doesn't do any of the screaming that Ian Gillan does. But I think his voice is really cool, especially on this album. There's something about it. It has a very welcoming quality to it that I actually really like. Um, and you know, the adventurousness of the songwriting on this album is really, really unique for like the time, and even for Deep Purple. I think they would sort of get, they sort of created their new formula on in rock, and then basically sort of stayed within that formula for the most part until they got to the Mark III era, and then they sort of shook things up again. Definitely check this one out if you haven't heard it. I highly recommend it. I absolutely love this album. And that's it for today. Hit that subscribe button if you like what I'm doing here, and I'll see you tomorrow.